Hello everyone, this is Pradeep Bhandari. Welcome to the second and final session of the famous authentication server Kerberos. In the first session, we discussed the motivation, requirements of Kerberos, and we also discussed the simple and Kerberos 4 authentication dialog. For refreshing the first session, let's have a quick look at the Kerberos 4 authentication mechanism. As you can see in the figure, in step 1, user logs on to the workstation and requests service on host. Authentication server, that is AS, verifies user's access right in database, creates ticket granting ticket and session key. Results are encrypted using key derived from user password. Workstation prompts user for password and uses password to decrypt incoming message, then sends ticket and authenticator that contain user's name, network address and time to TGS. TGS decrypts ticket and authenticator, verifies request, then creates ticket for requested server. Workstation sends ticket and authenticator to server. Server verifies that ticket and authenticator match, then grants access to service. If mutual authentication is required, server returns an authenticator. Now let's briefly discuss the variation of multiple Kerberos server scenario. A full service Kerberos environment consisting of a Kerberos server, a number of clients and a number of application servers requires the following. Number 1. The Kerberos server must have the user ID and hashed password of all participating users in its database. All users are registered with the Kerberos server. The Kerberos server must share a secret key with each server. All servers are registered with the Kerberos server. Such an environment is referred to as a Kerberos ream. The concept of ream can be explained as follows. A Kerberos ream is a set of managed nodes that share the same Kerberos database. The Kerberos database resides on the Kerberos master computer system, which should be kept in a physically secure room. A read-only copy of the Kerberos database might also reside on other Kerberos computer system. However, all changes to the database must be made on the master computer system. Changing or accessing the contents of a Kerberos database requires the Kerberos master password. A related concept is that of a Kerberos principal, which is a service or user that is known to the Kerberos system. Each Kerberos principal is identified by its principal name. Principal names consist of three parts: a service or user name, an instance name and a ream name. Networks of clients and servers under different administrative organizations typically constitute different reams. That is, it generally is not practical or does not conform to administrative policy to have users and servers in one administrative domain registered with the Kerberos server elsewhere. However, users in one ream may need access to servers in another reams, and some servers may be willing to provide service to users from other reams, provided that those users are authenticated. Kerberos provides a mechanism for supporting such inter-ream authentication. For two reams to support inter-ream authentication, a third requirement is added. That is, the Kerberos server in each interoperating ream shares a secret key with the server in the other ream. The two Kerberos servers are registered with each other. The scheme requires that the Kerberos server in one ream trust the Kerberos server in the other ream to authenticate its users. Furthermore, the participating servers in the second ream must also be willing to trust the Kerberos server in the first ream. With these ground rules in place, we can describe the mechanism as shown in figure. A user wishing service on a server in another ream needs a ticket for that server. The user's client follows the usual procedure to gain access to the local TGS and then requests a ticket granting ticket for a remote TGS, that is TGS in another ream. The client can then apply to the remote TGS for a service granting ticket for the desired server in the ream of the remote TGS. The authentication dialog is as shown on the screen. The ticket presented to the remote server, termed as VRAM, indicates that the ream in which the user was originally authenticated. The server chooses whether to honor the remote request. One problem presented by the foregoing approach is that it does not scale well to many reams. If there are n reams, then there must be n into n plus 1 by 2 secure key exchanges so that each Kerberos ream can interpret with all other Kerberos reams. That's it. With the Kerberos 4, now let's discuss the Kerberos version 5. Kerberos version 5 is specified in RFC 1510 and provides a number of improvements over version 4. To begin, we provide an overview of the changes from version 4 to version 5 and then look at the version 5 protocol. Now let's elaborate on differences between version 4 and 5. Version 5 is intended to address the limitations of version 4 in two areas: environmental shortcomings and technical deficiencies. Let us briefly summarize the improvements in each area. Kerberos version 4 was developed for use within the Project Athena environment and accordingly did not fully address the need to be of general purpose. This led to the following shortcomings. Encryption system dependence. The version 4 requires the use of DES. Export restriction on DES as well as doubts about the strength of DES were thus of concern. In version 5, ciphertext is tagged with an encryption type identifier so that any encryption technique may be used. Encryption keys are tagged with a type and a length, allowing the same key to be used in different algorithms and allowing the specification of different variations on a given algorithm. Second is Internet Protocol dependence. Version 4 requires the use of Internet Protocol addresses. Other addresses types such as the ISO network addresses are not accommodated. Version 5 network addresses are tagged with type and length, allowing any network address type to be used. Message byte ordering. In version 4, the sender of a message employs a byte ordering of its own, choosing and tags the message to indicate least significant byte in lowest address or most significant byte in lowest address. This technique works but does not follow established conventions. In version 5, all message structures are defined using abstract syntax notation, that is ASN.1, and basic encoding rules, which provide an unambiguous byte ordering. Then is ticket lifetime. Lifetime values in version 4 are encoded in an 8-bit quantity in units of 5 minutes. Thus, the maximum lifetime that can be expressed is 28 into 5, that makes 1280 minutes or a little over 21 hours. This may be inadequate for some applications. For example, a long running simulation that requires valid Kerberos credentials throughout execution. In version 5, tickets include an explicit start time and end time, allowing tickets with arbitrary lifetimes. Authentication forwarding. Version 4 does not allow credentials issued to one client to be forwarded to some other host and used by some other client. This capability would enable a client to access a server and have that server access another server on behalf of the client. For example, a client issues a request to a print server that then accesses the client's file from a file server using the client's credential for access. Version 5 provides this capability. Inter-ream authentication. In version 4, interoperability among n reams requires on the order of n2 Kerberos to Kerberos relationships as described earlier. Version 5 supports a method that requires fewer relationships as described shortly. Apart from these limitations, there are technical deficiencies in the version 4 protocol itself, and version 5 attempts to address these shortcomings. The deficiencies are as following. First is double encryption. Tickets provided to clients are encrypted twice, once with the secret key of the target server and then again with a secret key known to the client. The second encryption is not necessary and is computationally wasteful. Then is PCBC encryption. Encryption in version 4 makes use of non-standard mode of DES known as propagating cipher block chaining, that is PCBC. It has been demonstrated that this mode is vulnerable to an attack involving the interchange of ciphertext blocks. PCBC was intended to provide an integrity check as part of encryption operation. Version 5 provides explicit integrity mechanisms, allowing the standard CBC mode to be used for encryption. In particular, a checksum or hash code is attached to the message prior to encryption using CBC. Then is session keys. Each ticket includes a session key that is used by the client to encrypt the authenticator sent to the service associated with that ticket. In addition, the session key may subsequently be used by the client and the server to protect message passed during the session. However, because the same ticket may be used repeatedly to gain service from a particular server, there is the risk that an opponent will replay message from an old session to the client or the server. In version 5, it is possible for a client and server to negotiate a sub-session key, which is to be used only for that one connection. A new access by the client would result in the use of a new sub-session key. Password attacks. Both versions are vulnerable to a password attack. The message from the authentication server, that is AS, to the client includes material encrypted with a key based on client's password. An opponent can capture this message and attempt to decrypt it by trying various passwords. If the result of a test decryption is of the proper form, then the opponent has discovered the client's password and may subsequently use it to gain authentication credentials from Kerberos. Version 5 does provide a mechanism known as pre-authentication, which should make password attacks more difficult, but it does not prevent them. The version 5 authentication dialog is as shown on the screen. Authentication service exchange to obtain ticket granting ticket. Ticket granting service exchange to obtain service granting ticket. Client server authentication exchange to obtain service. First, consider the authentication service exchange. Message 1 is a client request for a ticket granting ticket. As before, it includes the ID of the user and the TGS. The following new elements are added. First is ream, indicates ream of the user. Options, used to request that certain flags be set in the return ticket. Times, used by the client to request the following time setting in the ticket. From the desired start time for the requested ticket till the requested expiration time for the requested ticket, R time, requested renew till time. Nonce, a random value to be repeated in message to assure that the response is fresh and has not been replayed by an opponent. Message 2 returns a ticket granting ticket, identifying information for the client, and a block encrypted using the encryption key based on the user's password. This block includes the session key to be used between the client and the TGS times specified in message 1. The nonce from message 1 and the TGS identifying information. The ticket itself includes the session key, identifying information for the client, the requested time values, and flags that reflect the status of this ticket and the requested options. These flags introduce significant new functionality to version 5. For now, we defer a discussion of these flags and concentrate on the overall structure of the version 5 protocol. Let us now compare the ticket granting service exchange for version 4 and 5. We see that message 3 for both versions includes an authenticator, a ticket, and the name of requested service. In addition, version 5 includes requested times and options for the ticket and a nonce. All these functions similar to those of message 1. The authenticator itself is essentially the same as the one used in version 4. Message 4 has the same structure as message 2, returning a ticket plus information needed by the client. The latter encrypted with the session key now shared by the client and the TGS. Finally, for the client server authentication exchange, several new features appear in version 5. In message 5, the client may request as an option that mutual authentication is required. The authenticator includes several new fields which are as follows. Number 1 is subkey. The client's choice for an encryption key to be used to protect this specific application session. If this field is omitted, the session key from the ticket KCV is used. Then is sequence number, an optional field that specifies the starting sequence number to be used by the server for messages sent to the client during this session. Messages may be sequence number to detect replays. If mutual authentication is required, the server responds with message 6. This message includes the timestamp from the authenticator. Note that in version 4, the timestamp was incremented by 1. This is not necessary in version 5 because the nature of the format of messages is such that it is not possible for an opponent to create message 6 without knowledge of the appropriate encryption keys. The subkey field, if present, overrides the subkey field if present in message 5. The optional sequence number field specify the starting sequence number to be used by the client. Let's discuss ticket flags. The flag field included in the ticket in version 5 supports expanded functionality compared to that of available in version 4. The flags that may be included in a ticket are as follows. Number 1 is initial. This ticket was issued using the AS protocol and not issued based on a ticket granting ticket. Pre-authent. During initial authentication, the client was authenticated by the KDC before the ticket was issued. Then is HW authent. The protocol employed for initial authentication required for the use of hardware expected to be possessed solely by the named client. Renewable tells TGS that this ticket can be used to obtain a replacement ticket that expires at a later date. May post date tells TGS that a post dated ticket may be issued based on this ticket granting ticket. Post dated indicates that this ticket has been postdated. The end server can check the auth time field to see when the original authentication occurred. Invalid. This ticket is invalid and must be validated by the KDC before use. Then is proxyable, tells TGS that a new service granting ticket with a different network address may be issued based on the presented ticket. Proxy indicate that this ticket is a proxy. Forwardable tells TGS that a new ticket granting ticket with a different network address may be issued based on this ticket granting ticket. Forwarded indicates that this ticket has either been forwarded or was issued based on authentication involving a forwarded ticket granting ticket. The initial flag indicates that the ticket was issued by the authentication server AS, not by the TGS. When a client requests a service granting ticket from the TGS, it presents a ticket granting ticket obtained from the authentication server AS. In version 4, this was the only way to obtain a service granting ticket. Version 5 provides the additional capability that the client can get a service granting ticket directly from the authentication server. The utility of this is as follows. A server such as a password changing server may wish to know that the client's password was recently tested. The pre-authent flag, if set, indicates that when the authentication server received the initial request, it authenticated the client before issuing a ticket. The exact form of this pre-authentication is left unspecified. As an example, the MIT implementation of version 5 has encrypted timestamp pre-authentication enabled by default. When a user wants to get a ticket, it has to send to the authentication server a pre-authentication block containing a random co-founder, a version number and a timestamp encrypted in the client's password based key. The authentication server AS decrypts the block and will not send a ticket granting ticket back unless the timestamp in the pre-authentication block is within the allowable time skew, that is time interval to account for clock drift and network delays. Another possibility is the use of a smart card that generates continually changing passwords that are included in the pre-authenticated messages. The passwords generated by the card can be based on a user's password but be transformed by the card so that in effect arbitrary passwords are used. This prevents an attack based on easily guessed passwords. If a smart card or similar device was used, this is indicated by the hardware authent HW authent flag. When a ticket has a long lifetime, there is the potential for it to be stolen and used by an opponent for a considerable period. If a short lifetime is used to lessen the threat, then overhead is involved in acquiring new tickets. In the case of ticket granting ticket, the client would either have to store the user's secret key, which is clearly risky, or repeatedly ask the user for a password. A compromise scheme is the use of renewable ticket. A ticket with the renewable flag set includes two expiration times, one for this specific ticket and one that is the latest permissible value for an expiration time. A client can have ticket renewed by presenting it to the TGS with the requested new expiration time. If the new time is within the limit of latest permissible value, the TGS can issue a new ticket with a new session time and a later specific expiration time. The advantage of this mechanism is that TGS may refuse to renew a ticket reported as stolen. The client may request that the authentication server AS provide a ticket granting ticket with the May post date flag set. The client can then use this ticket to request a ticket that is flagged as post dated and invalid from the TGS. Subsequently, the client may submit the post dated ticket for the validation. This scheme can be useful for running a long batch job on a server that requires a ticket periodically. The client can obtain a number of tickets for this session at once with spread out time values. All but the first ticket are initially invalid. When the execution reaches a point in time when a new ticket is required, the client can get the appropriate ticket validated. With this approach, the client does not have to repeatedly use its ticket granting ticket to obtain a service granting ticket. In version 5, it is possible for a server to act as a proxy on behalf of a client, in effect adopting the credentials and privileges of the client to request a service from another server. If a client wishes to use this mechanism, it requests a ticket granting ticket with the proxyable flag set. When this ticket is presented to the TGS is permitted to issue a service granting ticket with a different network address. This latter ticket will have its proxy flag set. An application receiving such a ticket may accept it or require additional authentication to provide an audit trail. The proxy concept is a limited case of the more powerful forwarding procedure. If a ticket is set with the forwardable flag, a TGS can issue to the requester a ticket granting ticket with a different network address and the forwarded flag set. This ticket can then be presented to a remote TGS. This capability allows a client to gain access to a server on another ream without requiring that each Kerberos maintain a secret key with Kerberos server in every other ream. For example, ream could be structured hierarchically. Then a client could walk up the tree to a common node and then back down to reach the target ream. Each step of the walk would involve forwarding a ticket granting ticket to the next TGS in the path. So to conclude, Kerberos authentication server is very effective in corporate scenario to authenticate clients and server that add a significant layer of protection in terms of authentication and assess security. I hope you have enjoyed this session a lot. Thanks for watching this session.